Hi, it's Stephanie and welcome to my channel.
Hello everybody, I have woken up to this snowy day. Oh my gosh, it is really coming down. I don't know if you can see. We've had such a mild winter, and then today we have got all of this, and it's pretty fun, right? Okay, well, I'm going to be getting on with my book reviews. It is my January wrap-up, and yeah, I'm going to be doing a lot of reading today because this is the perfect day to read.
Today is my January wrap-up. It's all the books that I've read for the month of January, and I'm going to give you my opinions, a bit of the blurb, and how I've rated them. The book is Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell. I saw this book and I read the synopsis and I thought, wow, this is going to be an awesome book. And it was, and I really enjoyed it. The only thing that I found on this book was I was at chapter 30 and I was a few pages into it, and then suddenly it just stopped and it jumped to chapter 34. And you can't imagine, well, you probably can imagine my frustration when there's 4 chapters. It was quite important to the story were missing from this book. But other than that, I thought this book was great. I've given it a 4 out of 5. It's about her mother and she's looking for her daughter. She goes missing. It's been about 10 years later and she meets a man and she starts to move on with her life. Only to discover that the gentleman that she's starting to date has a daughter who's very similar looking to her own daughter. So when I read that, I thought, oh my gosh, I have to read this book. It sounds amazing, a thriller, and it's going to be one of those books that I won't put down. And I was right. I did not put this book down. Really enjoyed it. Style of writing was fine, it wasn't impressive, so I'm only going to probably gave this a 4 out of 5, just because I did enjoy it, but there was elements to it that just became a little bit predictable. But other than that, really enjoyed this book. Next is Kristin Hannah, The Nightingale, and I heard a lot of people raving about this on BookTube. A historical fiction about 2 sisters who separated during the World War II period, and they are very different personalities. They have to find their way of survival during this time, and there's a lot of detail in here that kind of think, oh my gosh, was it really like that? And I can imagine it was really like that, and I can't possibly imagine how they were feeling during this period, but she writes it beautifully. I really enjoyed it. I have read a lot of historical fictions. I do like period dramas based around the World War II. So I highly recommend this book. I gave it a 4. I think it's a 4 out of 5. It was a bit heavy going, I have to confess. So there were times when I just had to put this down, and it took me a while to read it because it was, like I said, it's heavy going. And it's a bit of a tearjerker, but I really enjoyed this, and I'd probably get one of her books. In fact, I've got one of her books on order, so it should be coming, oh gosh, I don't know, next few weeks, hopefully. But yeah, really enjoyed this. I highly recommend it if you love period historical fiction novels. Moving on to classical books, this is Ernest Hemingway, and it's The Old Man and the Sea. Never ever heard of this book before, never read any Ernest Hemingway books before, and it's pretty short. It was, how much? About 100 and just over 120 pages, under 130 pages. It's one of those that I sat down and read within a few hours. It is best read that way, I felt. Quick story, so you may as well read it in one go, and it's a bit of a roller coaster. Can't give too much away because it just gives the story away. It is literally about an old man and the sea, his journey, his perseverance, and there's more to it, but you may find your opinions of the story may be different from others' opinions. And I gave this 4.5 out of 5 just because the story kept going on and on and on, and I think some people that I had read comments about just said, oh, enough already. I did feel like that a little bit, but it was also captivating. So 4.5 out of 5, just because I think this was a fun story. Of Mice and Men, and this is by John Steinbeck. And watched the adaptation, never read the book, finally read the book and sat down and just went through it again within a few hours, just over 150 pages? Oh, it's even less, 103 pages, but the writing's slightly smaller, so it packs a bit more information in there, a bit more of a story. Beautifully written, really engaging, couldn't put it down. It's not that I don't know the story, because I do know the story. The movie is very similar to what's in the book, and brilliant. Really enjoyed it. I highly recommend it to everybody. I know some people probably read this in high school. I did not. Don't know why. We did Shakespeare and Animal Farm, so I don't remember ever going through the Mice and Men book, but brilliant. Wish I'd read it sooner than I did, and yeah, great story. Gave this is 5 out of 5. You can't go wrong with Of Mice and Men. It's a brilliant book, beautifully written. I love the prose. It's definitely highly recommended. Next is Matthew Sullivan's Midnight at the Bright Ideas Bookstore paperback. I think I got this from Book Outlet. Yeah, I did, because of the dot on there. Really enjoyed this book. It took a couple of days to read, probably 2-3 days to read. It's about a girl named Lydia who finds somebody dead in the bookshop that she works at, and she finds a picture of herself in his pocket. She doesn't know the person, and the story becomes a mystery thriller, and a lot more involved than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a really easy read, which it was, but it was a bit of hard hitting. It was hard hitting as well in some respects. Was it predictable? Yes, to a point, but closer to the end, you kind of started figuring things out towards the end, which I liked about this book. At least I didn't know within the first few pages or the first few chapters where this book was going. Really enjoyed it. Highly recommend. 4 out of 5. Yeah, you can't go wrong with it if you like mystery thrillers. Kate Morton, The Clockmaker's Daughter, and stunning cover. I like these. I think they're called French folds. Quite a hefty book. It took quite a long time to read. I gave this a 4 out of 5, just because I thought at one point it's like, okay, when is this story going to end? In some ways though, I didn't want it to end. So it was a beautifully written story. I love Kate Morton's writing. I will be buying more of her books. This is about a girl who is investigating something about her regarding her mother. Something happened in the past, and she sees a picture of a building and it looks very familiar. And there's lots of voices in this story. There's a lot of different periods, and there's a lot of characters, so it was kind of difficult. If I put this down for too long, it was really difficult to remember and remind myself who was who. But Kate wrote it so well that within a few sentences of the chapter, you realise, oh, that's where I am at. So she made that very clear each time. Really loved this book. Great story. I can't tell you too much about it. I just can't tell you too much about it. It would give too much away. But it's complex. You've got to focus on the story, but it's well worth it. Absolutely well worth it. Circe by Madeline Miller. Picked this up not that long ago. I think I got it in January. Just finished this book. I didn't find this book was one of those I just sat down and read and read and read. I kept putting it down and reading other books in between. It's very, I suppose the word is melancholy. It's a bit depressing to read in some respects. It's the tone of the book is that way as well, and I found that quite difficult to read. I didn't enjoy that respect of it. The story is well written. what happens during Cersei's time, how she goes from being young to growing into the person that she is, and the times that she sees people, the love and the loss, the birth. It's very well written. It's just that the tone of this book was really quite depressing in some respects. So I found this quite difficult to read. It took me quite a long time to get through it. And I say a long time, it took about 3 weeks to get through it because I just kept putting it down and reading other books in between. So yeah, would I highly recommend it? If you like Greek mythology, yeah, sure. I'll give it 4 out of 5 because it is a good book. It is a good story. It's a great introduction if you're into, if you want to understand Greek mythology. So yeah, I don't know what people were raving about it for, but it was fine. A Winter's Promise, and this is by Christelle Dabo, and this was written in French and has been translated to English. The second book is coming out in May this year, or at least it is in Canada, and really enjoyed this book. It's very easy to read. It was a YA fantasy novel. A girl who, Ophelia, I think that's how you pronounce her name, Ophelia, and she is to be married to somebody who's based in a different world to her own, is my interpretation of it. So she lives more in a modern world where she works as a woman and she's more involved, and in this world is a bit more Edwardian, old-fashioned in some ways. There's a lot of politics involved in this story, and she has to navigate around this world. She's not familiar with it. She's used to being very hands-on, then being open-minded to women working, to women having an opinion. Whereas in this world she has to navigate politics, she has to navigate dangerous situations, and people don't think she's strong enough to cope with this just because she looks thin and she's frail, but she's actually got a very strong mind, and I like that about this book. It's really good and well put together. When I read the end of this, I thought, oh god, I've got to get the second book. Really enjoyed it. Very easy to read, didn't take very long to read. Highly recommend it if you're into YA fantasy. I give this 4 out of 5. So Mortal Engines, and this is by Philip Reeve. What can I say about this book? I know it's been turned into a movie. I haven't seen the movie. I found it's a YA fantasy. It's a little bit, for me it was a little bit out there. I found this really difficult to imagine the worlds and the places or the cities that he was talking about. I read the first few chapters, got lost along the way, skim read it, almost gave up on it, and then I read part 2 of this book and it redeemed itself, and it was really good towards the end, kind of predictable. But I'm giving this a 3 out of 5. I will not be rereading this. Maybe my kids will like this book, it's probably more their thing, but I did not enjoy this book. I don't know. It wasn't that it was badly written, I just think the creativity was a bit too beyond my imagination, and when I saw the clip or the trailer of the movie, I thought, oh, that's what he meant, and that's a bit weird. That's all I can say about this book. I will never reread this. This will be an unhaul, I think. This one, The Light Between Worlds by Laura E. Weymouth. I wanted to love this book. I really wanted to love this book. My dog's barking outside, he's playing in the snow. The premise of the book sounded really interesting, and it's very similar to The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. So you've got children who are running from their house, running into the air raid shelter, and the parents haven't come along, or the mother hasn't come along yet, and one of them wishes that they could be somewhere else, they didn't have to live through this. And next thing you know, they're in a woodland. It's not a winter woodland like the one in The Lion, the Witch and the Wardrobe. This is more of a spring, perhaps summer, if I can remember. I don't remember this very much. and they end up in a different world. And it's, oh God, it's so badly written. I don't know if I'm going to get back to reading this. I'm into 14 chapters and I'm thinking, okay, it's somehow they've been walking the woods for 2 months or however long. It mentioned that the parents may or may not be worried. How they know that, I don't know. There was a lot of skimming of the story, like it just jumped in the story, and it's like, how do you know your parents aren't going to be worried? It was almost like they were reassuring themselves. There was no explanation, and there was a lot of digging going on, and it talks about the now and then the then, like what happened then and how they are managing in the world today. And one of them sounds like they're struggling, and she's trying to find herself, is what I've been hearing about this book. I don't know. I may try and reread this, but this is a DNF for now. For this month, I can't get through this, and I'm not going to get through this any soon. But yeah, this was really disappointing, and the writing was, I would like to say, horrendous. It's not quite horrendous. I've read worse. But I'm probably going to put this as a 2.5 out of 5. And that's being generous. Did not like this book. Next is Wuthering Heights and Emily Bronte. Absolutely loving this book. Haven't read it all yet. I've been busy kind of going through all the stories. Love the writing style. They got the how do you explain it? They've taken on the northern accent in some of this. So if you're not used to the northern English accent, then you may struggle reading some of the parts to this book, but they're not necessary to understand anyway. I understand it. I'm from the north of it. Well, I'm actually from the middle of England, Midlands, and but I'm used to northern accents, so I actually quite enjoyed that side of it, and it was well done as well. Sometimes accents can be, when it's written, can be badly done, but this was really well done, and I should expect that actually, because since they're from the north. So yeah, really enjoying this book. I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 5 already, because I do know the story. I love the Bronte sisters books anyway, and I'm just loving the way where it's going. 2 more books, both by the same author, and I'm gonna go through this one first, by Nicola Yoon. Everything. Love the cover of this book. Even that's pretty. I liked the writing style of this. At first I thought, oh gosh, it's gonna have information like dates. It's got dates and graphs and pictures and emails and I just thought, I'm not gonna like this. It's gonna be too young. But actually, it wasn't at all. It's a YA novel. It was brilliant. It wasn't as predictable as I thought it was going to be, but it was predictable at a point. So, but having said that, I love the writing of this book. I really enjoyed the story. It's about a girl who has a disease, who she's cooped up in her home, away from anything that could affect her immune system, and she comes, I think it's her 16th or 18th birthday, I can't remember now, because it's been quite a while since I've read it, and I've read many books in between, but I think it's the 16th or 18th. Anyway, a new neighbour comes in. It's a boy, and she really likes him, and she finds a way to talk to him, and then the story evolves from that. I'm not going to reveal any more than that. It's all about taking risks in this book, and I just loved it. It was great, and highly recommend. Giving it 4.5 out of 5. And last but not least, another Nicola Yoon, and this is The Sun Is Also a Star. Did not like this book as much as the other one, so I'm going to give this a 4 out of 5. This is about Natasha and Daniel from different backgrounds, different cultures. They're very different in personality, opposites attract. They meet by chance encounter, and other than that, I'm not going to give any more details because it'll give the story away. But I liked how the voices were brought together by different people. So Natasha's voice, Daniel's voice, then there was the parents' voice, the siblings' voice, and other characters within the book. There was different voices and their opinions and their thoughts of why they were doing what they were doing. Really enjoyed it. Like I said, I've given this a 4 out of 5 rather than the 4.5 out of 5 from the Everything. I think this for me was a little bit too young in mentality. Absolutely loved the ending of this book. I'm so glad I read it. Normally I don't bother reading the endings of these books, and almost brought a tear to my eye. I just thought this is wonderful. I would like to see Nicola Yoon doing more adult stuff though. I think she could do that. But right now this sort of age group for me is kind of, it's nice, but I can't relate. You know, I was there 20 years ago. So I find some of that kind of the mentality thinking, and some of the writing wasn't as good in this one. There were some sentences in this book, 3 sentences that really annoyed me in this book, but then she redeemed herself by explaining it with another sentence. And so that helped me, but it annoyed me enough to kind of mark this down for me. But anyway, really enjoyed it. So that's it for now. I think that's enough for that January. I've got through quite a lot of books this month. I won't be getting through so many in February, but I will be doing a February TBR, and we shall get a video to you soon. Okay, bye.